Hello.
Joseph,
Yes.
nice to see you. I can hear you just fine.
All right.
Steve, okay. Let me make you a co-host. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now. Steve, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Unmuting, how's that?
All right. Hear you loud and clear.
Good, and I have my slides up and I can alt tab over to them like this, but now I can't see you.
Oh, you can't.
Maybe, well, now I can see just a little corner of the slides. I can make you smaller.
Well, if you share your screen, you should, well, I know there's a split screen option. So when you share your screen, at least I'll see both you and the screen. So that's what will be recorded.
Okay, should I do multiple participants can share or one?
Just one.
Okay, so I'll click that.
Yeah, yeah, are you clicking on the share screen green button at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, okay, and now I'm gonna click this one and click share. Oh, that's better.
Okay, now we got both whoever's speaking on one side and your slide on the other side.
Oddly enough, my clicker is no longer working, though it was before.
I can see something moving on the screen, your cursor, little arrow.
Yeah, but my, well, I wonder if I click on it. No, I can't seem to down screen. Oh, there it goes. Okay, just took a second.
Software.
Got it. Okay, how set up are we there, Steve?
Well, we're recording and you're up, so we'll just edit this front part of it. I think Susan should be on soon, and so I want to look for her and make her a co-host as well, so she can help me with monitoring questions that may get typed into the chat window. And yeah, she's the one who's supposed to introduce you.
Well, we both know Susan.
Well, we're 6 minutes early, so we're in good shape.
We're good, and we're all set up. That only took a few seconds.
Okay, Susan, you're now co-host as well. So it's the 3 S's, 2 Steves and a Susan.
Steve, you're really there in Hawaii with that's real water behind you?
No, that's the same screen that a lot of people use, but that's just what it looks like around here.
But why is it blowing your hair?
That's the electronic wind that blows my hair.
Electronic wind?
Well,
Well, there's
the,
some
the,
wind here too where I am.
but
We
it's
have both
also
real
the
wind
case
and
that
electronic wind.
any type of background screen has to make a decision about where the edge of the person is and where the background is going to be, and that's always going back and forth. So his hair is actually kind of transporting in and out of different dimensions.
Well, yeah, I can see. It looks like it's blowing to fit the background.
Perfect.
Not quite the same with Mr. Friedman, though.
You solved the problem by not having hair.
I can see that.
Good sense of humor.
Yeah, but
Well,
if you
Susan,
maybe
you
were
have the
wearing a
most hair.
shirt the same color as your background, you could have your shoulder fade in and out. That would be a super feature.
Yeah, I don't think yeah, that'd be hard to focus on the content.
Okay, 3 minutes to go. We're all here. Well, 11 of us so far.
Well,
Well,
it is the night of the Democratic convention, and I believe the presidential nominee is going to speak tonight. So we'll probably lose a lot of Democrats.
yeah, that could be.
Okay, then we'll make it up with online views.
Yep.
Since it's posted.
Yep. We couldn't predict what competition we would have tonight. It does look like your hair is blowing, Steve.
Yeah, if I move my head, it really gets windy.
Yeah.
Well, then your forehead caves, but if you stay still, your head, whoa, that hair is really blowing. Oh, wow, it looks like you're on the same beach. That's really cool.
Yeah, Joseph is on the same screen as I am, but reversed.
Looks idyllic.
Well, it's kind of nice being in Hawaii without all the tourists.
It must be. It's nice
The
driving
beaches
to
are
work
empty.
without all the cars.
Yeah, the roads are empty and the beaches are empty.
Yep.
Okay, 1 minute to go.
Oh, that's nice. That's beautiful, the bridge behind you.
Where are you, Joseph?
I'm in Cupertino.
Oh, well, then the bridge is appropriate, although the Bay Bridge would be more.
Yeah.
Which bridge is it? The Dumbarton?
That's the Golden Gate,
Yeah,
but
that's the Golden Gate.
yeah, the
Yeah, seen
Dumbarton
from the
would be
north.
closer.
I feel sorry for poor Mr. Barton, whom they named the bridge after.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't like to be him in grammar school.
Was his last name Arton?
Dumbarton.
I was thinking,
Well, I know, but
oh, Arton, yeah, that would work too.
okay, Susan, anytime you want.
Okie dokie. Okay, welcome to the Silicon Valley Health Institute. Here we bring top-notch experts to tell us about health so we can learn and, get information and share it and be proactive in our health. We're a nonprofit organization. We post all these presentations on our website, which is www.sbhi.com. If you have any questions for us or suggestions, you can always email us through that website. So tonight we have Dr. Stephen Blake. He's going to tell us about COVID and his studies and research and how we can prepare ourselves to deal with this virus that seems to be going to be around for a while. Anyway, Dr. Blake, he's a doctor of science, he's faculty of nutritional biochemistry at Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience. He's offered many classes at the University of Hawaii. He designed and ran the Hawaii Dementia Prevention Trial, a study of the Hawaii Alzheimer's Disease Center. He's the author of the 2008 McGraw-Hill College textbook, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, a nutritional approach to Alzheimer's disease, mastering migraines, Parkinson's disease, dietary regulation of dopamine, stop strokes before they start, and a book on understanding fats and oils. He has written Mosby's Alternative Remedies and is the co-author of Mosby's Drug Guide for Nurses, 4th edition. He also authored the Diet Doctor software for analyzing dietary nutrients. He's attended the University of California and is a research specialist in nutritional biochemistry. Welcome, Dr. Blake.
Thank you, Susan. That was very nice. I will say, though, that I have retired from the Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience, and I'm now working at the Maui Memory Clinic here on Maui with a neuropsychologist, and we're doing the same work.
Great.
Just to update my bio a little bit. So tonight, I want to share what I have to say about going beyond the mask. Sooner or later, I think it's likely that we're all going to be exposed to COVID-19. And my goal tonight is for everyone to have a nice, gentle experience with it and not be hospitalized or put on a ventilator or die. That's my goal for the talk tonight. And, my clicker is a little slow tonight. See if I can change slides here. There, that worked. What we really need to do is boost our immune system. Why is it that 80% of people have no symptoms at all, mild symptoms or moderate symptoms? Is it purely genetic? Is it just an accident? Or are there explanations for this? And I think there are explanations for this, and I found them in the literature. I've been digging very carefully. Our clinic had to close for 3 months because of COVID-19. So I had 3 months to go ahead and do editions 1, 2, and 3 of my book, Beyond the Mask, How to Survive COVID-19. It would be nice if we all had no symptoms at all, but a mild case is not too bad. It would be a lot like getting the flu and getting over it. Now, there can be some residual problems with COVID-19. So we also want to reduce any residual problems, and especially problems with blood circulation, clotting, and thrombosis. Although this graph here that shows 80% of cases are mild or moderate, I have to say that moderate in this study really is talking about what we would call fairly severe flu. You maybe walking pneumonia would be more accurate, but still, no hospital, no ventilator, and no death. So that's where we want to go. Now, I put together this little graph here, and what's interesting, it's from the Italian studies. They looked at people with different comorbidities. That means coexisting diseases. Hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease are the 3 that are very commonly found in people who've died of COVID-19. But I think the most striking statistic is those without any comorbidities. Of these 450 cadavers, only 6 of them didn't have known comorbidities. So if you can beat having hypertension, diabetes, stroke risk, or the other problems, then you're going to have much less of a chance of having a severe case and winding up in this autopsy study or another one. Another study looked at this, and you will see that almost all of my slides have at the bottom a reference. I believe scientific references are essential so people know where we got our information. Now, in this case, this is a MedRxiv. This is a study that has not yet been peer reviewed. However, I looked at studies over very carefully, and these are well done studies, and some of them are peer reviewed and some of them aren't because of the time crunch in studying this. 3 times as high of a chance of severe COVID-19 with high blood pressure. The actual relative risk 2.74 from 10 studies. 3 times the risk with diabetes, 2.81 out of 11 studies. And diabetes damages the blood circulation system through advanced glycation end products brought on by too much sugar in the bloodstream. It also can damage the kidneys that are necessary for clearing the debris from a viral attack. and 4 times the risk of severe COVID-19 with cardiovascular disease. This is from 9 studies, and the actual relative risk was 3.58. These are some of the publications that I've made. Thank you, Susan, for introducing most of them already, but I'll just draw your attention to one of my latest books, Diabetes Breakthrough. If you do have diabetes, the beauty of it with type 2 diabetes is you can often reverse it and get it to be much better within just a couple of weeks. And that makes it my favorite disease. With heart disease or hypertension, it takes longer. Hypertension may take months in order to get it down with these natural methods. And heart disease, it can take up to 2 years to completely clear your arteries if they're heavily clogged, and you follow these steps to do it. But still, isn't this a good time to start working on those things? If you do have diabetes, hypertension, or heart disease, like the majority of Americans, this is a good time to work on that. I will mention one other thing I did earlier. This was last year. I was named lead advisor for the Macmillan Reference Encyclopedia of Alternative Remedies and Alternative Medicine. And this is a huge encyclopedia. And I wrote and rewrote hundreds of articles for it. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I updated my knowledge because they only wanted 2018-19 studies in 2019 when I did it. So today, I'm going to break my talk into 5 segments. And we are going to ask that you could please make a note of any questions, and we'll get to you at the end of the talk. Number 1, reduce risk of a cytokine storm. Oh, raise your hand if you've heard of a cytokine storm. That doesn't really work on Zoom, does it? Thank you, Susan. Cytokine storms really are very damaging, and they are something that we have some control over. So I'll talk to you about alternatives to immunosuppressant drugs for cytokine storms, many alternatives that are much safer. Number 2, in order for COVID-19, actually the SARS-CoV-2 virus, if you want to be technical, from attaching to our cells, it has to attach to the ACE2 receptor with its spike protein. If that doesn't happen, it can't get in our cells, it can't replicate, and it cannot continue the infection. I'm going to give you lots of great, safe, well-documented ideas on how to stop this virus from attaching to our cells in the first place. Once the virus gets into our cells, it gets its RNA in there, it can replicate that RNA and make more viruses. Well, I'm going to tell you lots of great ways to make sure that your cells won't replicate this virus. Again, all safe, all well documented. Third, one of the things that we've noticed about this particular disease is that it seems to affect older people most. Is it age, or is it the age-related decline in immune system function? And I'm going to point out that it is the age-related decline in immune function and give you some great ideas on how to build up your immune system with nutrients so that it will function much better. Finally, I will mention a few scientifically validated medical plants that might be helpful along the way here. My website is drsteveblake.com. You can go there to find out more about all these things. So this cytokine storm really doesn't look at all like the picture on screen. When we first encounter a virulent pathogen like SARS-CoV-2, our innate immune system showers our body with inflammation, trying to kill off the virus without any particular exact antibodies or T cells targeted for these particular viruses. So it just throws immune cytokines at this, and the problem is that they can lead to a storm of cytokines that can just flood our body with inflammation, and especially our lungs with inflammation. And this is what gets people into trouble enough that they have to go to the hospital and get on a ventilator and maybe die. We want to avoid this. So my first section will talk about cytokines. Well, what is a cytokine, first of all? The first type of cytokine that you might want to know about is chemokines and lymphokines. These are chemoattractants. They pull immune system components, inflammatory components normally, into the cells and into the area where they're needed. Then there's interferon. Interferon's like a chemical messenger. It tells nearby cells that there's a virus infection and how to deal with it. I'm sure you've heard of interferon. It's also used as a therapy. Interleukins, there are many of them. The most common ones, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, interleukin 10, and 12. There's lots of interleukins, and most of them are quite inflammatory, and we can control those too. And finally, tumor necrosis factor is an odd name for a cytokine, isn't it? Nevertheless, it increases inflammation as something that we need to take care of. There's a nice Lancet study I'm quoting here in 2020, which considers the cytokine storm syndrome and also immunosuppression. In my case, I'm going to talk about safe immunosuppressants rather than drug immunosuppressants. When we're attacked by a virus, it takes time for our body to make specific antibodies, for our T cells to learn and our B cells to learn what the virus looks like. During this time is when our innate immune system is attacking the virus perhaps overboard with inflammation. Well, we need to make it through this period until we can develop our own antibodies. Now, this is just like getting a vaccine. In a vaccine, you build antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, which, by the way, stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. I don't like to use acronyms without spelling them out. And that's the name of the virus. COVID-19 is the name of the disease, and that just means coronavirus 19. So we want to get through this period of innate immune system activity and inflammation and get to where we can build specific antibodies. And so we need to calm our cytokine storm down. Well, quercetin. Quercetin is the polyphenol, and quercetin is the polyphenol that's eaten the most of by most people. Americans and European studies are showing this is the one we eat the most of. Easy to get, delicious, safe, red onions, grapes, apples, berries, beans. It is a flavanol flavonoid. If you're interested in polyphenols, a fascinating study. Quercetin reduces phospholipase. Are you ready for a little science here? I know, Steve, folks, you love science. Phospholipase goes into the cell membrane, phospholipids, and pulls out usually arachidonic acid, the most abundant long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acid. This arachidonic acid is then turned into, well, hydroperoxyeicosatetraenoic acid, if you like the short name, or HP. And this then becomes inflammatory leukotrienes. These inflammatory leukotrienes are really a huge burden to our body if they're in excess. And they're in excess, of course, if we eat arachidonic acid, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this quercetin really suppresses our body's overproduction of inflammatory leukotrienes. It's from the International Journal of Food Sciences and Nutrition in 2020, peer-reviewed journal. Other ways to reduce inflammation. Turmeric, green tea, and chamomile tea are certainly anti-inflammatory. You'll hear about turmeric as I go on in several places. Also, there are the cruciferous vegetables, and they contain sulforaphane. This sulforaphane, or indole-3-carbinol, very powerful to suppress cytokines and nuclear factor kappa B. I am going to talk more about nuclear factor kappa B as we go along, and I'll help define that for you too. It's like the master inflammation control. When it's triggered, you get a lot more inflammation. And there are ways, of course, to slow the triggering of it. And one way is by eating cruciferous vegetables, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, all of those. Soy products, I only recommend organic soy products because of the heavy spraying of the others and the possibility that genetically modified soy could be a problem. Genistein quenches inflammation and LOX. LOX is that lipoxygenase that transforms arachidonic acid into inflammatory leukotrienes. Of course, any source is fine: tofu, soy milk, tempeh, edamame, or soy sprouts. It does suppress cytokines. So if you're worried about having excess inflammation, now excess inflammation might bother you in your joints with osteoarthritis, for example. Excess inflammation certainly contributes to brain problems and thinking and dementia. So it's nice to decrease inflammation in the brain as well. I'm going to introduce you to PPAR gamma, peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma. There's also an alpha version of this that's completely different. Now I'm going to call it PPAR gamma because frankly it's a lot easier to say. Certain foods, herbs, and spices are rich in PPAR gamma, and they greatly reduce inflammation and the risk of a cytokine storm in COVID-19. I'm going to tell you which foods they are in a minute. The way it works is it reduces inflammation by reducing this nuclear factor kappa B, which is coming right up. I'll tell you more about that. It also increases antioxidant enzymes. Now, antioxidants are also very important, and Steve Folks is writing a book where he mentions antioxidants prominently. Thank you, Steve. And these antioxidants and antioxidant enzymes are important because when our immune system attacks inside of our cell, there's collateral damage, usually mediated by free radicals and other antioxidant damage. So this is very important. Okay, what is nuclear factor kappa B? I like to call it nuclear transcription factor kappa B because it changes the transcribing of genes, the expression of genes, into inflammatory mediators. It's activated by stress. Cytokines themselves activate it, endotoxins, which I'll be mentioning here in a few slides, and free radicals. Now, it's interesting that PPAR gamma reduces this nuclear factor kappa B, the master inflammation control. So PPAR gamma is very important, but antioxidants also decrease this inflammatory regulator. Okay, here we go. Get out your shopping list. Turmeric with its curcumin activates PPAR gamma. Thyme, oregano, rosemary, and sage, that sounds like a song, doesn't it? Mediterranean herbs. They have carvacrol and carnosol, and these are known to activate PPAR gamma. When it's activated, it suppresses the various inflammatory factors in our bodies. Hot peppers have capsaicin. Red grapes have resveratrol, and you'll hear about resveratrol as we go on. It seems to be very important for COVID-19. Pomegranate has punicic acid, and here we see lemongrass and lemongrass tea. The delicious fragrance of lemongrass tea is mediated by citral, and citral triggers and activates PPAR gamma to reduce inflammation. Isn't that interesting? I did talk a little bit about the omega-6 arachidonic acid and how it greatly increases inflammation. If you have more omega-3 than omega-6, then you can reduce inflammation. And this is through a similar pathway, but the leukotrienes made in this pathway reduce inflammation. And in addition to leukotrienes, we also have resolvins and protectants and others that are made from omega-3s that reduce inflammation. Some examples of good sources are ground up walnuts, flax seeds powder, perilla seeds, which are a lot like flax in their composition, chia seeds, and hemp seeds. At the bottom, you see my book, Understanding Dietary Fats and Oils, a scientific guide to their health effects. This is available for under 10 bucks on my website. It is a college textbook with quizzes and all that, but it is an in-depth study. I go over every saturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and talk about their health effects. I also go through the various different plants and what kind of oils and fats they have, as well, of course, as dairy fat, meat fat, and so on. Eliminating arachidonic acid from the diet is a good way to slow down inflammation. I can tell you this has a really powerful effect. When I was teaching classes on osteoarthritis at the University of Hawaii, at the first class, people would come in with wheelchairs, walkers, canes. People were really in pain. And I would get volunteers from the first class and say, who wants to give up turkey, chicken, and eggs? The ones that have the most arachidonic acid. And this, by the way, is true for grass-fed or non-grass-fed. I've looked it up using my own diet doctor and the USDA information, as well as Australian databases and European databases. So what they did, a week later, they'd come back to the class, and every single person, I know this isn't science, but it's anecdotal and a lot of fun, every single person reported a big change in their life. They were walking twice as far, they had half the pain. They're doing a lot better just without turkey, chicken, and eggs, which by no means the only way that we get arachidonic acid. It's found in all animal fat, including human fat, and of course humans make every bit we need. So you can eliminate that from your diet. If you happen to be undergoing severe COVID-19 and on your way to the hospital, I think that would be an especially good time to stop eating arachidonic acid. Oh, by the way, speaking of arachidonic acid, do you know what aspirin and Advil block? They block the cyclooxygenase enzymes that turn arachidonic acid into painful prostaglandins and inflammatory leukotrienes. That's what they do. So instead of taking the painkillers and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, why not just turn down the arachidonic acid in your diet? You can go either way, but the drugs do have side effects, and a lot of people die from these NSAIDs. I think I did mention leukotrienes from omega-3s and they're resolving inflammation. Now, there's another problem with COVID-19 that we're seeing pop up. The research is not yet conclusive on the coagulation pathology that we're seeing in COVID-19. There certainly is coagulation pathology. And part of the coagulation cascade is thromboxanes. Thromboxanes are eicosanoids, and they're made from either omega-3s or omega-6s. The omega-3s reduce the clotting in the blood and open up the blood vessels for better flow. The omega-6 thromboxanes tend to close the arteries and tend to make the blood clot faster. So it's very important that we keep this balance between omega-3s and omega-6s just right. And from my research, about 3-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 and excluding arachidonic acid would be a very good balance. And that's from many, many studies around the world. Here's a little graph that I made up. You can see that turkey, chicken, and eggs, along with other animal fat, directly contain arachidonic acid. If we take too much of the oils that are in bottles, let's say, most of them have a lot of omega-6s, which our bodies make into arachidonic acid. And we can make too much arachidonic acid if we get too much of those. Then the lipoxygenase enzymes, or LOX, create more pain and inflammation. On the other hand, more omega-3s makes more EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid. More lipoxygenase enzymes then make less pain and inflammation. So we have our choice. You can control pain and inflammation. And the pain is, of course, mediated through prostaglandins. What else do prostaglandins mediate? Fever. And that's a big problem with COVID-19. It's one of the classic symptoms is fever and dry cough. Some people want to get their omega-3s from fish oils. But when I look at the studies on fish oils, they are heavily contaminated. PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, are a severe problem in many ways. I know from studying Parkinson's disease that they damage our ability to make dopamine, which not only can increase our risk of Parkinson's disease or progression, but also interferes with our happiness, because dopamine is important for that, as I'm sure our resident psychiatrist, Susan, can concur. Fish oil is often contaminated with mercury and dioxin and many other persistent organic pollutants that our ocean is now filled with. This would not be true 100 years ago, but it's certainly true now. One other problem is the rancidity factor. DHA and EPA, DHA is docosahexaenoic acid, these two are the most fragile fatty acids. They're extremely susceptible to heat, oxygen, and light, which cause rancidity. And rancid oils increase DNA adducts and the risk of cancer. We don't want that. But one big study looked at fish oils in South Africa, where a lot of them are made, and they found that the fish oil were 91% rancid before they left the factory, before they were bottled, transported, shipped, put on a shelf, before you bought them and put them in your refrigerator. By that time, I would say chances of rancidity are very close to 100%. And again, rancidity is not a good idea at all. So you might want to rethink fish oil and think about other ways to get omega-3s. I'm going to talk about endotoxins. During the cooking of meat, chicken, fish, and dairy products, we all know that you have to cook them to kill the bacteria. Very well known. The leftover parts of the dead bacteria are called endotoxins or lipopolysaccharides. They make our immune system think that we're infected. Our immune system sees these leftover parts of the bacteria and reacts as if we were, in fact, infected, when really we're not. But it looks that way. So for hours after taking any of these foods with endotoxins, we suffer excess inflammation in our arteries, in our joints, in our brain. This has all been tested over and over again. In fact, when scientists want to test an anti-inflammatory drug on rats, guess what they do to the poor little rats? They give them endotoxins. lipopolysaccharides, and that raises their inflammation level so much they can test their anti-inflammatory drugs and see how well they're working. So I would suggest, to reduce risk of cytokine storm and constant upgraded chronic inflammation, you eliminate endotoxins from your diet. And this, of course, would mean eliminating any animal foods with any significant amount of fat. Now, the fat tends to transport the endotoxins into the bloodstream. So if it's truly a non-fat animal product, then you would not get much transport of the endotoxins, but all the others really trigger inflammation greatly. This study in international immunopharmacology is a good one, and there are many, many, many others. I love to read science, and I have, let's see, I think I'm well over 9,000 studies that I have collected, named, and saved for future use. And I have them named in such a way I can easily find them in separate folders. One more thing, advanced glycation end products. You may have heard that in diabetes, the excess sugar can glycate to the proteins in blood and to the blood vessels, causing a lot of damage, especially to the kidneys, to the eyes, and other delicate parts of the blood system. Advanced glycation end products can also be formed when you fry, barbecue, or broil any animal product. It doesn't work with plant products because plants all contain some water, and water interrupts the amidori process so that they can't actually form. These advanced glycation end products, which have the acronym AGE, and they are also responsible for those age lines on our faces as we grow a bit older, they can generate an estimated 50 times as many free radicals compared to a normal protein. And in our Hawaii dementia prevention trial, I included avoiding these advanced glycation end products in our study to help, because they lodge in the amyloid plaques in the brain and really kill off brain cells. So another good reason to stay away from those. One of the most recent and best studies on this I found in the Canadian Journal of Diabetes in 2018. It's shown on screen here. Well, there's one other source of advanced glycation end products I have not mentioned yet, and that's aged cheeses. They don't occur in milk, and in fresh cheese or yogurt, they're very low levels. However, when you age cheese, the sugars and the proteins cross-link together, and you get these advanced glycation end products. They are protein fragments. They have been proven to absorb into the bloodstream from the digestive tract. About half of them, the smaller half, are absorbed, raising circulating advanced glycation end products. They travel to the brain with a very interesting receptor called RAGE. And RAGE stands for receptor for advanced glycation end products. When they enter the brain, they increase inflammation dramatically. And this is a very bad effect. Then they go on to populate the amyloid plaques and shower the brain with free radicals for the rest of your life, because these advanced glycation end products are not easy for the body to get rid of. I would say not possible would be closer to the truth. Here's a list of where they are. Chicken, bacon, beef, chicken, chicken, beef, chicken, beef, chicken, turkey, chicken. You get the idea. This is going down from the topmost down a little bit. That's a disadvantage to these foods. Now, on the right of your screen, you'll see a few other disadvantages. Now, one of these disadvantages is less in free-range meats and dairy products, but the rest are all the same. Organochlorine, the persistent organopollutants like organochlorines, whether it is organic or non-organic meat doesn't matter. These are in the environment and they're no longer used, but they're everywhere and they bioaccumulate in the animals. Rancid oils from frying, and frying is a very common way to fix these, especially chicken and bacon. Harmine is a heterocyclic amine, widely known to increase tremors in essential tremor and in Parkinson's disease. If you have problems with tremors, you may want to exclude products that contain harmine. Arachidonic acid I mentioned, and endotoxins I mentioned. Oxysterols are also found in all of these animal products. Oxysterols are oxidized cholesterol, and this is where we see the real damage from high cholesterol foods. It's not from raising saturated fat, cholesterol in the bloodstream. It's from the oxidized cholesterol. And the excess saturated fat is actually less in the wild or free range cattle or dairy. And then there's the lack of anti-inflammatory content. There's very little in the way of anti-inflammatories in any of these products. So just something to think about if you're trying to beat inflammation and a few other diseases, along the ways. I put this slide in honor of Steve Folks, because in perusing his book, he showed how important these antioxidants are. And I wanted to just mention some. Vitamin A is carotenoids, or fat-soluble antioxidants, very important for lowering inflammation. Vitamin C, when they're given intravenously, are used as ascorbates, and they are finding some good results from using this in the hospital with people in sepsis for sure, and sometimes with just severe COVID-19. Vitamin E in the natural forms is a wonderful antioxidant, essential, and I'll be talking about vitamin E further as we go along. Polyphenols are plant chemicals found in berries, and they're in a lot of whole plant foods. Now, our internal antioxidants, such as superoxide dismutase, need zinc, copper, and manganese in order to work. If we run out, it stops working. And these are crucial antioxidants to protect every part of our body, certainly including our lungs. And selenium is required for glutathione peroxidase. It simply does not work if we run out of selenium. So you need to make sure that you're getting your antioxidants and antioxidant enzyme support minerals every single day. Okay, we finished the section here on how to reduce risk of a cytokine storm. And I hope that I've given you some good ideas. There's more in my book, Beyond the Mask, on my website, drsteveblake.com. I've made that only $10, so anyone can afford it. If you have lost your job and you're destitute, but you want the book, email me and I'll send you a free copy. So you want to eat plenty of whole plant foods for antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. We can build specific immunity to COVID-19 if we have time. We can activate PPAR gamma. Do you remember some of those that can do that? Certainly the lemongrass tea comes to mind with that wonderful aroma. Omega-3s from plants are a good idea, but arachidonic acid from animal fat increases inflammation. We can also avoid endotoxins by avoiding animal fat, and avoid advanced glycation end products by avoiding frying, barbecue, broiling, where you get that browned look on the animal products. So do maximize your antioxidants for protection. Now this is a nice little graph that shows you how it works. The SARS-CoV-2 virus attaches to the ACE2 receptor. That's the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor. When it docks to that receptor, it puts its RNA into your cells, say the cells in the lungs. It's the most likely place in this case. Then the RNA makes more SARS-CoV-2 copies. These copies manage to break out of the cell, get into our bodies, and this shows 3. There may be millions made. It's really a scary virus in the amount of replication that it can do. So I'm going to show you how to fight both the docking to the ACE2 receptor and the replication. And one of the last slides, I'll talk about stopping it from breaking out too. So the first step is to stop it from attaching to our receptors. This particular virus only attaches to the one receptor. Many foods and spices, and as you're beginning to know again, I believe this might be my 10th talk here at what I used to call Smart Life Forum. It's now Silicon Valley Health Institute. Here's some fun ones. Up to 100% inhibition of COVID-19, actually SARS-CoV-2, was found for sweet cherries. Now, who doesn't want to eat some sweet cherries? You can integrate that into your life. Up to 70% inhibition of viral attachment was found through the ACE2 receptor for bitter orange and garlic. So a little roasted garlic can be added to many dishes. It's delicious, and it's very, very protective. This is, by the way, from the Archives of Clinical Infectious Diseases peer-reviewed study. Although I do use a lot of studies that are preprint, this one happens to be peer-reviewed. Now, apigenin is a polyphenol that's found in study to stop COVID-19 binding more than the antiviral drug nelfinavir. You can find it in celery and parsley. Chinese cabbage is shown, and red bell peppers here, and guavas. It is guava season here in Maui, and that's a really fun way to get our apigenin. It's also found in feverfew tea, which some people drink for headaches, chamomile tea, and passion flowers, which passion flowers are a very sedating tea. So if you're going to drink passion flower tea, you better do it before bed. Other foods to prevent the binding of the COVID spike to the ACE2 receptor. Green tea was found to be the most active agent in this Indian study, along with turmeric and beta-glucan from whole oats. These also, all three, slowed the replication of COVID-19 inside the cell. So they had double benefits. It was interesting, the green tea showed that it only slowed the attachment and replication for a short period of time of an hour or two, but the whole oats, such as oatmeal, slowed it for 24 hours. Slowed attachment to the SARS-CoV-2 to the ACE2 receptor for 24 hours. So perhaps that oatmeal is looking a little more healthy than it did. Now, who's heard of lectins? Certainly you've heard of lectins. There are some people who are saying, oh, lectins are the devil, and because they occur in beans and grains, you must never eat beans and grains, somehow managing to skip the fact that these lectins are inactivated by cooking. Oh well, I guess they didn't do their homework. So lectins from licorice root and skullcap stop the attachment of COVID-19 to our cells and slow replication of the virus. They can cut attachment by 50%. And you can get a lot more leeks into your diet than you can licorice powder. So I put leeks on screen. They also powerfully stopped attachment. Leeks and other things in the allium family, the onion family, they all did slow attachment. Now I'm going to talk about bicolin. Chinese skullcap is known as bical skullcap, and it's a very powerful plant. It contains bicolin and also bicoline. They inhibited the main enzyme in the replication of the COVID-19 virus as well as attachment to the cell. Now, skullcap tea is used widely for sleeping. I've used it myself, a few leaves and a little bit of hot water, and it works on the benzodiazepine receptors, the allosteric receptors, to increase GABA, the gamma-aminobutyric acid, the principal calming neurotransmitter in the brain. And it also lowers the amount of glutamate, the principal excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. So this has some nice effects outside of just stopping the attachment and replication of the virus. But please don't operate heavy equipment after taking this tea. You really need to be in your pajamas before you take this one, okay? Now, I mentioned quercetin once before. What's interesting is that the COVID-19 infection triggers more ACE2 cell receptors to be made by the cells, kind of propagating itself. However, quercetin lowers the production of the ACE2, these ACE2 receptors in the cell, reducing attachment opportunities for COVID-19. So it significantly decreases the production of ACE2 receptors inside the cell. This was a USA study that was looking at vitamin D and quercetin. I will mention vitamin D a little later on. And quercetin, you remember, it's easily gotten from red grapes, red onions, berries, apples, and beans. You may not have heard of hispidulene. It's the flavonoid found in skullcap and rosemary. It was interesting that it reduced COVID-19 binding, actually SARS-CoV-2 binding to the ACE2 receptor more than the well-known and very notorious antiviral drug hydroxychloroquine. Well, I've looked up the side effects of hydroxychloroquine and I've kept up on the research on it. And not only is it not at all, it does not have the research that hispidulene does to show that it really helps. And it also has some terrible side effects that really need to be looked at. Some of them are deadly. So we need to be very careful with antiviral drugs. Actually, this isn't an antiviral drug, it's not approved for that. But hispidulene blocks replication as well as attachment to the cell. Oregano, thyme, and sage can be added to dishes to make them delicious, and they have hispidulene. And I quote an Algerian study on this, very well done. Now, grapes and citrus fruits also can stop the COVID spike binding. Also rutin, this is a citrus bioflavonoid, be very powerful. So grapes and citrus are healthful and they can stop the binding of the SARS-CoV-2 virus to our cells. You're getting the idea that you have some power over this virus. You really do. And the power is in your choices in the shopping. Okay, well, we take a breath here. We have finished attachment to the cell. Now let's see if we can, this is a nasty virus. It really is a terrible one. And I know many calm, Harvard-educated doctors who are really scared of this virus, and I've never seen them fear anything else, because really it chokes you to death. And not being able to breathe is just a terrible thing. We need to stop it from multiplying in our cells. Now, the way it reproduces itself is basically through two enzymes. I'll use their shorter names, the main protease and also the RNA polymerase. If we can block these two enzymes, then we can block the replication. We slow down the replication, then our adaptive immune system will have time to make specific antibodies. Our T cells and B cells can get educated on this, and we can really conquer this thing. So I'm going to tell you about what can do this. The way we've learned most about the ability to stop the replication of these viruses is through binding energy studies. And they score the various things, such as the drug remdesivir. Now, remdesivir is the only drug that has been approved for use in the United States, and this is an intravenous drug for use in COVID-19, only in severe cases, of course. And it does have some severe side effects too. And it scores 9 kcals per mole on this blocking of these enzymes. Vitamin B2 scores 9. A component of spirulina, phycocyanidin, excuse me, that's hard to say, scored even higher. Isn't that interesting that some natural products are scoring higher than the only approved antiviral drug, but side effects from vitamin B2? No, it's really one of the safest B vitamins. So here's a graph that shows how foods rate that block the virus. Remdesivir, 9. Phycocyanidin, 9.3, even more. But remember, even if cyanidin in grapes scores only 8.8, you can eat a lot more grapes, and you can get a lot of this blocking of the polymerases and the main enzymes. Diazidine and genistein, both found in soy, both scored between 8 and 9. Resveratrol in grapes, which we've heard before, which lowers inflammation and also lowers spike binding, also lowers the proteases and enzymes that recreate more and more, millions of these viruses inside our bodies. Curcumin in turmeric, 8.1, pretty good score. You can add that to your food. Astaxanthin, you may have heard of as a powerful antioxidant, comes from algae, seaweed. Beta carotene, eat more plants that are colorful or green, and you get more beta carotene. Capsaicin from cayenne, gingerol from ginger, vanillin from vanilla beans, and cloves and thyme. All of these have a great deal of power to stop the ability of the virus from replicating in our bodies. If it can't replicate, then the infection is over. We're not getting flooded with more and more and more. Our cells aren't doing the bidding of the virus and making more of them. We're stopping it. My wife put healthy recipes for friends. I tested all the recipes, all delicious, thank you. You could make an antiviral dish such as organic tofu for genistein and diazidine, carrots for beta carotene, spinach for vitamin B2, and ginger, turmeric, and thyme. All of these block the enzymes that create more of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and block the progression of the COVID-19 disease. Hydroxychloroquine reduced binding by 8.3 on the same scale. Turmeric scored 8.4, and neem, an Indian herb that's widely used as a disinfectant, also beat hydroxychloroquine at slowing virus replication. And this, by the way, slowing virus replication is how remdesivir does its job, and that is how hydroxychloroquine can do its job, if it does it, which is not established yet at all. Red onion, ginger, ashwagandha all scored as well as chloroquine, a very similar drug. This is actually from an Indian study. They looked for Indian plants that could help with this. And they also found that aloe vera, but it's very difficult to eat much aloe vera. Its gel is pretty yucky, and unless you're having stomach ulcers, most people don't really ingest it. It makes a nice picture though. What about luteolin? A 2020 study was done at most all of these studies are 2020, identified compounds in artichoke luteolin, again, turmeric, curcumin, partially the apigenin, which you've heard about before, and the green tea catechins have the best potential to act as COVID-19 replication inhibitors. So you might want to include some artichokes. The thing about these solutions, like all of my solutions, they are not harmful and they are helpful. To the extent that you eat more of these healthy foods, you'll eat less unhealthy foods and junk food, and that'll be good for you, right? And I'll try and follow my own advice too. Scutellarin. Did I mention skullcap already? I know I did. But scutellarin is another component of skullcap. I mentioned bicolin, twice as powerful in inhibiting the ability of COVID-19 to reproduce compared to the antiviral drug nelfinavir. Again, just a caution, drink only while in pajamas. It acts very quickly as a nervous system relaxant. The quercetin, which I've also mentioned several times, the most abundant polyphenol and flavonoid found in most diets, a powerful inhibitor of COVID-19's main protease, more powerful than, again, the notorious drug hydroxychloroquine. It inhibited the main protease of COVID-19 to directly reduce viral replication. This is a Japanese study that I'm quoting on this one. Myricetin is another flavonoid found to have 3 times the power to slow replication of COVID-19 compared again to the antiviral drug nelfinavir. Myricetin's in vegetables, tomatoes, fruits, nuts, berries, tea, and red wine. I know some of you were waiting for me to mention red wine. Well, there it is. Myricetin is similar to other flavonoids like fisetin, luteolin, and quercetin. All of these can be found in whole plant foods, perhaps not in junk foods made from whole plant foods, though. Do you want to mention grapefruits? Anyone enjoys grapefruits? They have naringin. Naringin's responsible for that distinctive taste of grapefruit. You know what I mean. It's a slightly bitter taste that grapefruit has. It disrupts the replication of COVID-19 better than nelfinavir. And another citrus bioflavonoid or flavonoid was found to be 3 times more powerful than this antiviral drug. Glutathione is found in some foods, and up here I show asparagus, some potatoes, and carrots. Is one of the best inhibitors of this virus, replication of the virus, along with biotin, thiamine. These are 2 B vitamins, and also vitamin E. They all inhibit virus replication. Okay, well, we've gotten through not having a cytokine storm, or at least reducing our risk. We've talked about not allowing the SARS-CoV-2 virus to attach to our cells. We've talked about blocking the replication of this virus in our bodies so our cells don't become unwilling factories for this vicious virus. Now I want to talk about immune function. Certain micronutrients are essential for immune function, and this is very, very well researched. Particularly important, vitamins A, C, D, E, B1, B2, B6, B12, folate, selenium, copper, and zinc. It is rare to get all of these from a diet in high enough quantities. And I say this not because I'm guessing, but as author of the Diet Doctor software, I've been analyzing diets for many long years, many long decades. And I can tell you it's very, very rare. I actually did just analyze someone in the clinic who was getting all of these, and I was pleasantly surprised. But it's extremely rare to get all of these, and each one is essential for immune function. We must get them in the right form and the right amount. And the right amount is not necessarily the RDA. We may need more of these than the RDA. Remember, when we look at vitamins and minerals, there is a minimum daily amount, the recommended amount. Say with vitamin E, that might be 15 milligrams. And then there's an upper limit, which are very conservatively set. Say for vitamin E, 1,000 milligrams a day. That's the upper limit. Okay, we want to get between these two. So the RDA may not be the exact right place to be when we're looking at essential nutrients. Now, in elders, they looked at elders, and they looked at their plasma. They weren't guessing in this study. This is in the Annals of Nutrition and Metabolism. In elders, 61% had low zinc in their plasma. 68% had low selenium. 75% had low vitamin C in their plasma. That's shocking. Of course, many of these elders were eating in institutions, and I've seen the food. I've given lectures in those institutions. Sometimes that food can be pretty low in healthful nutrients. Multivitamin mineral supplementation reduced viral infections by 1/3 to 2/3 in this study. Another study showed that they reduced infections in patients in their 80s by 1/2 or more. So the difference between age-related decline in immune function and not having age-related decline in immune function. Here I'm trying to show you a healthy and an unhealthy elder now. Multivitamins reverse the age-related decline in white blood cells, and that includes quite a wide variety of white blood cells. T helper cells and monocytes, macrophages, and dendritic cells, which are particularly important in protecting our lungs. Multivitamins improve the immune power and natural killer cells, and the natural killer cells remove infected cells that are replicating viruses. Very, very important. This is from the journal Clinical Infectious Diseases. Now I'll go through some of the vitamins, most of them briefly, and then I have a few extra comments on vitamin E. Vitamin A is very important worldwide in blocking infectious diseases. Deficiencies in vitamin A are responsible for vast hundreds of millions of diseases worldwide, because especially children and pregnant women cannot get this vital nutrient. And most people in most places in the world make most of their vitamin A from the carotenoids, the carotenes. And then there's also preformed vitamin A, which if you're taking as a supplement, you need to be very careful with, because over 5,000 IUs in elders can be dangerous. Vitamin A helps the membrane function in the lungs to block the entry of pathogens. It also helps the skin. Vitamin A supports the neutrophils and macrophages and killer cells. They're necessary for immune defense. There's vitamin A supplementation, and I like these studies where they reduce the rates of infection and death from coronaviruses. That's good stuff. That's what we want. So make sure you get enough vitamin A. I like to make sure people get enough carotenoids, and especially the carotene carotenoids, which is alpha carotene, beta carotene, and beta cryptoxanthin. Those are the three of the carotenoids that are carotenes and can be made easily into vitamin A in our bodies. We have that enzyme. Many other animals do not. Vitamin D. I'm going to show you a study. This study really blew my mind when I read it. They looked at 780 confirmed cases of severe COVID-19 in entry into a hospital, and they checked their vitamin D levels. 179 patients had deficient vitamin D, and only 2 lived. 388 people had adequate vitamin D, and only 4% died. Only 16 out of 388 people with adequate vitamin D died. Isn't that fantastic? So this Dr. Rahuro-san, who wrote this, recently died, not of COVID-19, but the study has been enlarged, and there's now a graph with it. But I just wanted you to know that vitamin D is extremely important. Now, my friend and colleague, Dr. Bill Grant, who's given talks here, wrote this book, Embrace the Sun. And if you want to know about vitamin D, Embrace the Sun is an excellent resource. And he's talking about vitamin D as really a lifesaver and absolutely necessary daily nutrient. Now, for vitamin D supplementation, the upper tolerable limit is set at 4,000 IUs per day. This is a very conservative upper limit, but I never recommend anything that even could be unsafe. So I say stick to the upper limit. Don't take more than 4,000 IUs a day. My experience is that people who take this much and then have their blood tested find that it goes up very quickly to very acceptable levels, levels which in the previous slide would show that you had a very small chance of dying from COVID-19 compared to people with low levels of vitamin D. Now, if you're going to take vitamin D, please take the vitamin D3 form, the cholecalciferol, and at least 1,000 IUs a day, which is modern times is known as 25 micrograms, and up to 4,000 IUs a day, which is now known as 1,000 micrograms. Vitamin B12, of course, is another essential nutrient. We know all about it from megaloblastic anemia and neurological defects. It lowers infection rates of COVID-19, reduces the severity of COVID-19, and inhibits viral replication of COVID-19. If you weren't convinced before to take vitamin B12, I hope that you are now. The activity of immune cells is greatly enhanced when we have sufficient levels of folate and vitamin B12. Now, folate is another B vitamin. Supplementation in elderly individuals improved overall immune function. I like this part. Reversing age-associated decrease in natural killer cell activity. It improved the killing of virus-infected cells and reduced infection. Folate is the safe form and the natural form of this B vitamin. Folic acid is a synthetic form and is not safe. Folic acid in excess of 1,000 micrograms from all sources daily can lead to increased risk of certain cancers. So I would never recommend the use of folic acid, which is also used to fortify grains in the United States. So you can get it from any kind of grains or breakfast cereals, or it's also fortified in soy products, and any number of products are fortified with this folic acid. So you need to be careful not to take that and take only the folate. Vitamin C is crucial to boost immune response to influenza and for limiting lung damage after influenza. It stimulates phagocytes, which engulf and destroy viruses, increases interferon, which is our messenger that tells cells to be ready for this viral infection, stimulates T cell activity. And I want to emphasize that building antibodies is not enough, because if we're exposed to COVID-19, and I think we will be, I think all of us will be, this is one very virulent virus, and it is very easy to get because it's very infectious when people are showing those symptoms. So someone can walk around, and we hear about someone who went to 2 bars and infected 47 people, or the person who sang in a choir infected 100 people. And this is very infectious. So we really want to stimulate our T cell activity because T cells last long. I was just reading a study last night, 17 years later, the T cells were still active against a pathogen, whereas antibodies typically last for maybe months, perhaps years. So we want to be sure that our T cell activity and vitamin C is one good way to do it. Oranges, and did you know bell peppers are higher in vitamin C than oranges? Now, vitamin E. I think I've got 5 slides on vitamin E. It's that important. In this study, they used 200 IUs of vitamin E, the modern way to say this is 133 milligrams, raised immune response in the elderly 2 to 6 times compared to those with lower vitamin E. Well, how many elders and other people are low in vitamin E? 93% of Americans are low in vitamin E. Don't even have the bare minimum amount of vitamin E, much less the optimum levels. 2 to 6 times reduction in viral activity, 2 to 6 times increase in immune response. And of course, the raised immune response attacked the influenza virus, lowering death rates. And I don't see any difference with attacking this virus either. It's the same principle. Now, we can also cut pneumonia risk with vitamin E. The big problem with COVID-19 is pneumonia. Now, it's not a typical pneumonia. It really is a different way of making it difficult to breathe in our lungs. But vitamin E does stop that progression. In a large study where they used only 75 IUs for over 7,000 people, they reduced the incidence of pneumonia by 69 to 72%. Now, that's a very significant amount of reduction. Vitamin E also reduced influenza virus in the lungs. They measure it in titers. 25 times less in older and 15 times less in younger mice who they're doing this experiment with, reversing the age-associated decline in natural killer cells. That's exactly what we need if you happen to be on, let's say, the sunnier side of 50 or 55 or 60 or whatever the number is these days. Even young people, of course, need to get vitamin E because it did reduce the influenza virus 15 times in younger people too, on younger mice in this case. Also, vitamin E increased the beneficial T cells, which are memory cells, and decreased prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are responsible for fever, for instance, which is one of the components of this virus. When you do consider taking vitamin E as a supplement, you really need to only take the RRR alpha tocopherol form, not the all racemic alpha tocopherol form, and take it with other tocopherols as well. Vitamin E supplementation reduced the risk of a cytokine storm by limiting COX enzymes and leukotrienes. It also reduced pro-inflammatory cytokines, including tumor necrosis factor and interleukin-6. Remember those from my cytokine storm chapter. So less than 10% of Americans even get the bare minimum of vitamin E. One more on vitamin E. We need more vitamin E than we can get from our diets. I analyze diets all the time. The highest I've ever seen was 45 milligrams of vitamin E, but 200 milligrams, about 300 IUs, for 1 year in elderly resulted in lower incidence and shorter duration of upper respiratory infection. So we want to make sure that we get enough vitamin E and the right form of vitamin E. Now I'm going to mention selenium. It decreases severe lung disease from influenza and helps decrease lung disease by reducing inflammatory markers such as chemokines. There's also an increase in anti-inflammatory signaling molecules. So selenium reduces inflammation. It's a trace mineral. You need a certain amount, 55 micrograms per day, but the upper limit, I believe, is 95 micrograms per day. So it's a very tight level between enough and too much. This is true of most of the trace minerals. You want to get the right amount, not too much. Now, zinc we've all heard of for COVID-19, and stores all ran out of zinc when this first hit. Low levels of zinc are more common in elderly individuals, and just 30 days of low zinc intake can lead to 30 to 80% loss in immune defense capacity. How'd you like to lose 80% of your immune defense capacity and then have somebody sneeze on you with this COVID-19 virus? Zinc deficiency leads to reduction in valuable T cells and B cells. Both T cells and B cells lead to memory effects to remember this virus for long times. The T cells can actually produce antibodies later after your antibodies have disappeared. The B cells also lead to a memory effect. Several different ways that zinc works. It inhibits the SARS-CoV-2 RNA polymerase. And so it inhibits the proliferation of this virus, the reproduction, the replication of this virus. It decreases the activity of the ACE2 receptor, just like quercetin. It increases interferon alpha production, inhibits nuclear factor kappa B, reducing inflammation. Remember, the PPAR gamma was also reducing the nuclear factor kappa B to reduce inflammation. So it can limit cytokine storm in COVID-19. Also improves the barrier function of the lungs. You don't want to be without zinc. Now, this study used 45 milligrams of zinc per day. Guess what the upper limit is? 40. So they used a little more than the upper limit. Perhaps not terribly dangerous to use 5 milligrams over the upper limit, but I would recommend that people just stick with the established upper limits of 40 milligrams per day of zinc. Too much zinc can have bad effects. You can lose your sense of smell, for instance, but then COVID-19 can have you lose your sense of smell too. Just 45 milligrams, though, did dramatically reduce incidence of influenza in elderly individuals. They could then produce interferon in amounts comparable to younger subjects. So if you're thinking that you're older and you're more susceptible to COVID-19, these are all the techniques that you can use to make your immune system younger and stronger even than a youngster. Now, I get all of these nutrients from brain and body food, and I will note that I make a small profit from this. Small because I insisted that they use real vitamin E, which just about cut out all the profits. Vitamin E, the real vitamin E costs more than everything else in the bottle. It has all of the nutrients that I've been mentioning in just the right amounts and forms. As author, as thank you, Susan, mentioning Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, the McGraw-Hill College textbook, I went very carefully over each of the forms and amounts of each of the essential nutrients, vitamins and minerals. And I also, this is obsolete. I have not read and saved 9,320 peer-reviewed studies. It's actually over 9,400 now. This was a week ago. So I continue, like the nerd I am, to power through. Some people have television at night. I have science at night. I just want to talk a little now about spices and medicinal plants. There may come a time when you have a fever, you're coughing a dry cough, and you really think you might have contracted COVID-19. You call your doctor, or the nurse more likely, at your health provider, and you're told, no, you're not severe enough to come in. You can't even come in and see your doctor now. It's too dangerous. So what can you do at home? Well, Echinacea has a lot of great research. Like this is Virus Research Journal, a very respected journal. Stimulates the immune response, protects against viral infections, reduces inflammation, reduces risk of pneumonia. You do need a quality Echinacea. I have a favorite brand, and I'm not associated with the brand, but it's called Herb Farm Super Echinacea. It's the best stuff on the market. Another thing I like about it, if you do have a sore throat and a cough, it kind of numbs the throat when you put it in, and that's kind of a nice idea. So you might consider Echinacea, either Echinacea angustifolia or Echinacea purpurea. Now, mushrooms are widely used to boost immune power. This study looked at shiitake, maitake, and reishi mushrooms. Now, shiitakes can often be bought in a store and cooked up, so you can get a really nice large amount without having to resort to a pill. It activates macrophages, lung protective dendritic cells, and T cells. Really powers up the immune system. And maitake enhances the power of natural killer cells. Not a bad idea to include some delicious mushrooms with your meals. You may not have heard of black cumin oil. Nigelline and alpha-heterin are found in that, and they inhibited COVID-19 as well as the antiviral drug chloroquine, and better than favipiravir and the famous hydroxychloroquine. Ginseng is called man root in Chinese, and you can see the picture of this root looks very much like a man. I think that was manipulated just a little. I do have a research project. It's called the Herb Doctors. It's a commercial product that you can buy on my website, but it now includes 168,000 footnoted facts to the use of medicinal plants in over 54 countries worldwide. And it is very comprehensive. Out of this, I have spun 2 encyclopedias that total over 10,000 pages. And that's not all of it either. I like the database because you can put in various symptoms and find out which things are best for it. This study, though, looks at inflammation and the amount of SARS-CoV-2 in the lungs. The titers were remarkably reduced by red ginseng and vitamin C. Ginseng protects against inflammation by activating toll-like receptor 4. I haven't mentioned toll-like receptor 4, but if you're interested in the science of biochemistry, look it up. It's fascinating. Ginseng supports T cells and natural killer cells. It is an adaptogen, so it tends to help stabilize blood sugar and blood pressure, and stabilizing blood pressure would also be valuable. It does have a slight tendency to increase bleeding, so if you have a tendency toward bleeding or are on anticoagulant medication, you might not want to take ginseng. It also is a bit heating, so if you're a cool person, it's probably complementary, but if you're hot, then you may not want to take it because it may heat up your blood a little more. Widely used, of course, for men as an aphrodisiac. Astragalus is a very gentle root of a plant used widely in China. I was amazed that astragalus is one of the few plants that showed any positive effect in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a severe neurologic disorder. Astragalus improved the survival rate of cells infected with influenza virus and reduced damage to the cells. It improves antioxidant effects through superoxide dismutase and reduced damage and oxidation to lung tissue. It reduces inflammation again through the toll-like receptor. This is from a study in evidence-based complementary and alternative medicine in 2019. Astragalus is one of the safest roots that I know, and it's usually used in Chinese herbal lore by making in a soup, and so you get quite a few grams of it. However, it can be taken as capsules too. I know I mentioned turmeric. I'm going to finish this talk with a couple slides about turmeric. In addition to blocking attachment and replication of the SARS-CoV-2 virus to the ACE2 receptor, it protects us from the cytokine storm. It activates T cells, B cells, macrophages, neutrophils, all kinds of inflammatory cytokines and chemokines. It really reduces them, and it enhances antibodies. Oh, look, my battery is running low. This isn't good. There's no plug here. So I may disappear, and I do apologize for that. So turmeric can really help with viral neuraminidase to block the virus from getting out of the cells. And just summarize, this is what you've learned. Now, it looks like that I may run out of power here, one of the problems with Zoom calls. So if there are any questions, let's get them in soon before I fade away. Thank you very much for listening. Glad to have an opportunity to share my research.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody would like to ask a question, please click on the raised hand button. If you can't see it, open your participants window. We have a question here about the ketogenic and paleo diets. Are they inadvisable then, in your opinion?
Yes. Next question. I've analyzed them extensively, and there are some good parts about the paleo diet, the fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, and you know, the omega-3s, but then of course there's the bad parts. So as far as all those things I mentioned on the advanced glycation end product slide, those are all relevant to that. But please, let's go on.
Do you have any recommendations on good supplement brands? There's a lot of bad and cheap ones out there, and how would you go about qualifying a supplement choice?
All right, good question. I'll tell you, I can go through any store, health food store, Costco, anywhere, and look at the supplements, and the only thing keeping me from throwing them on the ground and stomping on them is that I'm a very polite person. Let's face it, supplements are normally made for profit. They put the lowest amount of the worst forms in each one. And I won't mention any names, but this brain and body food I made myself for patients of the clinic and for myself, my family, and specifically for people with memory loss. And you can get it on my website, drsteveblake.com. A lot of people do. And I like it because I can keep an eye on the manufacturer. And when they keep telling me, let's use the cheap vitamin E, I keep saying no. Do we have another question?
I'm just scanning down through some of the comments and stuff. What is your perspective on the effects of fasting on increasing one's immune system?
Well, if you're fasting, you're not likely to be getting all those nutrients I just mentioned. And that's not a good way to keep your immune system in good shape. Now, short occasional fasts might not be a bad idea. The concept of a fast from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. is not a bad idea. But we really need a lot of daily nutrients, both from food and from supplements. So we need to get those every day. They're daily nutrients. Almost all of them are needed daily. A few, like vitamin D and vitamin B12, are stored, but then we'll run low.
Okay, Rachel has a question for you.
Hi, so thank you for your presentation. Very thorough. I was able to follow along and I really appreciate that. I've heard about this virus being a bacteriophage, and I was wondering what that is and how does that work, as well as how is this, all of this connected to the microbiome and what can we do?
I didn't quite hear your words too clearly. There's someone cute in the background. What was it again?
She was
can
asking
you still hear
if,
me?
yeah, she was asking that somebody told her that COVID was a bacteriophage, and so that, I think that was the source of her question.
Oh,
Right.
no, not at all. Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's an
Okay.
RNA virus.
Right.
Encapsulated RNA virus. It's a coronavirus. It's not a bacteria. No,
Okay.
but bacterial side infections can occur, of course, afterwards, including pneumonia, and that's very severe.
Okay, Susie, you're up.
Okay. Hi, Steve. Thank you. Yeah, this is really good. Do you have a book with all this information in it, or?
I do. It's called Beyond the Mask, How to Survive COVID-19. My
okay.
website's on the bottom of the screen, drsteveblake.com. You can download it, and like I say, it's $10. If you choose, you can pay $25. It's the same book. Or if you're having a problem, with not having a job, email me and I'll send you a free one.
All right. Thank you.
And it
very
has much more than I could talk
And
about today.
There's also going to be a copy. There's a recording of the video also. Is that right?
Yes.
There is a recording of this video, but of course it doesn't have as much information as the book by necessity. And there is a separate recording of this talk, but I'd say very similar information to the recording by SVHI.
We'll link to that too.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. I use a lot of essential oils, and I wondered if, you know, the oils of herbs like sage and oregano and rosemary and so forth are as useful as the whole herb in terms of treating things like COVID. Oh, did he go?
I saw a message that said Steve Blake left. That might mean his battery ran out.
Yeah, it probably means his battery died. Yeah, he was also running a active background screen, which burns through your battery a lot. So
Doesn't he have electricity?
apparently not where his laptop is.
I think they're on solar. I know they have a very limited ability to get electricity. So yeah, he could have had just the regular palm trees in the background.
Yes, he could have. Shall we close it down?
So people can certainly ask questions, and, you know.
Steve, did you want to add anything to?
Well, if you can ask the question again, I've been paying a lot of attention to the participants and chat windows, looking for questions and trying to feed the process here. So if you want to ask me a question, feel free.
Steve, do you have an answer to the essential oil question I asked at all?
Well, essential oils are very active compounds. I mean, they're like drugs in their basic effect, and they're isolated out of plants. And so the biological effect is amplified by the fact that they're concentrated. But they're very powerful compounds, and many of them have generated, you know, pharmacologic-like benefits in people, like, you know, the use of peppermint oil for focusing mental power on decision makings and reaction times and stuff. So I use a lot of them myself. So I think highly of them, but I don't think I'm enough of an expert to say which one when.
Thank you.
Yeah, so go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
I wanted to make a comment.
Okay.
I loved Sarah Myhill's presentation. I've since read every single book she's ever written, and also Bill Code's. And they're such proponents of paleo and ketogenic that I've been doing that ever since. And so I'm a little disappointed to hear that the facts, the facts are so.
Susan, is this Susan Downs?
Yeah, you're on.
Hi, I can answer questions this way. I'm sorry, I ran out of battery. Would it be possible for me to answer questions through this device?
I don't know that we have any more questions for you. It's almost like the power failed at exactly the right time.
Okay. Well,
Actually, Steve, I do have.
We have Bill Horn has a question for you.
Actually, Steve, I do have a question. Have you looked at some of the work on preventing COVID storms with hydrogen water or inhaling hydrogen gas, because it seems to inhibit the kappa
NF-kappa B.
NF-kappa B.
Yeah. Hydrogen. Hydrogen?
Hydrogen gas.
Yeah, there's
Hydride.
yeah.
I've never seen research on that. No.
Oh, I'll send you. I can send you. I've got about 100 papers from Japan and China. There's some interesting research on it. Yeah, it acts as an antioxidant.
What they're doing?
Yeah, so they're finding a lot of anti-inflammatory effects of just small doses of hydrogen. In the case of the cytokine storm, it takes quite a bit of hydrogen inhalation, but they have gotten some good effects in COVID-19 patients.
I can also add, Steve, that when you look at that issue,
It's almost guaranteed to make their voice squeaky, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
well, your voice is also coming through squeaky because of the fact that we're going through an extra speaker and microphone. But when you look at that research, keep in mind that hydrogen is being confused between the gas, H2, and hydride, and they're very different properties.
I don't know. My going back to my chemistry, I would
an expert would need to administer.
Yeah, I think really it's basically H2 molecular hydrogen hydride. You're not going to see in that kind of a system that you need different physics and chemistry for that. But we can talk about that another time.
It's interesting. You know, in my way, it would have to be extremely safe for me to consider it. And I will look into it. And if it is extremely safe and effective, then I'll certainly consider it.
I have one more question for Stephen, folks. From the last time we were on, you had a nasal spray, zinc, NutriCrafters, right?
Yes, that wasn't SVHI. So that wouldn't apply to this particular.
No, I know, but I couldn't find it. I just wondered where you got it because I couldn't find it online.
NutriCrafters.com, N-U-T-R-I.
Maybe they're all out of it because I didn't see it. Okay, thank you.
Really? Oh.
Well, maybe I spelled something wrong. I don't know.
Well,
Crafter.
N-U-T-R-I instead of, you know, Nutra or.
Oh,
yeah.
What is it again? N-U-T-R-I?
Yeah, N-U-T-R-I and then Crafters.
Okay, maybe that's okay.
I also bought some through NutraStand.com. Sure, I mean, but you can also get a similar kind of effect of low dose zinc applied to the throat by taking a lozenge and putting it in your mouth for a couple of minutes and then taking it out and saving it and then waiting 10 or 15 minutes and putting it back in and getting a little bit more. So you can avoid that feeling of having like an army march through your throat.
Okay, thank you.
Please do be aware that there's an upper limit for zinc, and you want to be sure not to get more than 40 milligrams per day from combined nasal spray and lozenges and supplements.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a clinical report in my book about people using hundreds of milligrams of zinc over the course of, let's say, 1 to 3 weeks with good reported results, mostly clinical studies and anecdotal observations.
Right, and I don't doubt that unsafe amounts of zinc can have certain good effects, but the detrimental effects of excess zinc are very carefully noted and researched. And for me, I would never recommend something that would cause harm. Why? There's so many great ways that I just presented that do not cause harm. Loss of smell is one of the problems with excess zinc, but there are a lot of others. It can reduce the ability of copper in the body to work effectively, and we certainly need that reducing metal. It's a balance.
Okay, last questions. Open it up.
I wondered if I could ask the other Stephen about the use of essential oils instead of the whole herb, like oils like sage and thyme. And rosemary, is that a different, does that have a different effect or application in regards to treating COVID?
Oh, I think that they would contain the carnosol and cabricol. That usually the way those oils are made is they take the whole herb and soak the oils in them and maybe agitate them and then strain them out. A lot of the active ingredients are in there, but the research I've seen has been done with the whole plant extracts rather than the oil. But I think the oil would work fine. And all we're doing here is just boosting our ability to fight the virus.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve, for your perseverance and follow through. That's been excellent. So thank you for the talk. And
I just can't help myself.
yeah.
But thank you very much for your work and for hosting me. And Susan, I wish I could bring you flowers, but how about next time?
Next time we've got to, okay, let's do it.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you all so much, and I apologize for my battery.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll